Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your patience while we allowed as many people into this afternoon's webinar as possible. My name is Tom McEwen. I am the head of training at SAICE, and I'd like to thank you all for taking some time out of your busy day or week to join the session, which I'm sure is going to be very, very informative. And obviously, we have a very, very strong wide range of skills on the panel. So we're going to go and just quickly have a look and discuss what it is we're going to cover. Before I do introduce the panelists, I'd like to try and create a little bit of context around what will be discussed today. If we look at BIM in the civil ecosystem, in other words, the heading of the webinar was what is possible, where can it take you, what is the first step? We will gather that BIM is finally gaining in traction, particularly in the civil space. It's always been very popular in the architectural and some of the other disciplines, but more so now in the civil space, with more and more civil professionals acknowledging that it has a positive impact both on their industry in terms of enhancement and innovation. Today's webinar, we hope, will prompt the panel discussion around the ecosystem that BIM can afford the civil industry, looking at both global trends, using drone to design, Industry 4.0, and how the professional framework is evolving to adapt to these disruptions. The topics will be touched on by our esteemed panelists, providing context to projects incorporating intelligent technologies in the civil engineering sector here in South Africa. So as you can see, we will look at global trends, the drone to design, Industry 4.0, and the professional framework. Building information modeling technologies, workflows and processes have been adopted worldwide, so it's not unique to South Africa, and are seen as the intelligent methodology for digital transformation across the architecture, engineering, construction and operations industry. From the South African perspective, BIM is making leaps and bounds, as some of the speakers will articulate, with this event highlighting its application and innovation in the local industry, as well as global trends. Innovative applications such as design automation, drone to design, collaboration in the cloud, and other elements will be discussed by our esteemed panel, sharing their South African perspective, showing what is possible when combining engineering technicality and technology. The event will also shed light on recommended steps for companies and professionals to become BIM ready and embrace BIM and the advantages it provides. With an acceleration in demand and supply of civil infrastructure, and we're all praying for that, the way we do things needs to change, including the way we learn and the metrics associated to these components. In this regard, the panel will also be recapping the vision of EXA regarding their framework and how they are planning to broaden this to incorporate technology and in particular Industry 4.0. The event will also shed some light. Sorry, I'm just trying to check my notes. Let me now go and introduce the important people today, and that is our panelists. And again, SAICE and Baynes would like to thank them for being willing to step up onto this platform and to share what they are going to share with you and obviously to engage. I'll start off with our facilitator for the afternoon, and it's Angela Lang. She is not only going to manage the process, but she's going to also field and handle the Q&A session. She has been instrumental role player in the BIM community for over 4 years. Her contribution to raising the BIM tide movement has resulted in the exceptional annual BIM Harmby, where theory and practice meet. Angela echoes the core values of BIM community of, I've got to just check my notes again, guys, sorry. Generous and discreet, in spirit, cheer and stimulate, value that every voice counts, equality, that's leave your shoes, ego and agendas at the door. If these values that make Angela the ideal conversation facilitator, as you will all experience shortly. The first of our panel members is Shoan Jankun. He's a Senior Director at Jankun and Associates. He has 33 years experience in civil engineering analysis, design, and project and construction management, predominantly in the heavy industrial projects in the mining, cement, ferrochrome, and steel industries. He specialized in the detailed analysis and design of heavy reinforced concrete and structural steel structures, including foundations for buildings and heavy machinery, multi-story concrete frame structures to carry industrial equipment, tailings dam, decant towers, bridges, and concrete water retaining structures, high water temperatures and corrosive fluids. Our second speaker that is well known to most of you is Shoaib Yunus, who is a senior BIM technical specialist in civil infrastructure and mining at Baynes, and has been one of the members or frequent speakers in the various preceding BIM sessions that we have had. He has a great passion for design, infrastructure, and technology, and his passion has gained him recognition as the champion of BIM for civil infrastructure here in Africa. He is currently pursuing a master's in civil engineering and is also an Autodesk certified instructor, learning content developer, international speaker, and a webinar host. Last year, Shoaib won the Green Hat Award at the BIM in Africa Innovation Award Ceremony 2021 from 289 nominations from various countries across the African continent. At Baynes, he is involved in numerous projects encompassing BIM for infrastructure and other related projects. Marek Shukchi, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Global Business Development Executive at Autodesk. He supports key Autodesk customer accounts, providing industry insight, thought leadership on digital transformation, infrastructure sector expertise and technology, implementation and guidance, and also engagement at a national and international level on issues like information management and data exchange standards. Our next panel speaker, Mamonko Motsepi, is a geometric technologist at AM Consulting. She's been doing that role for over 6 years, functioning in the Roads and Transportation Department. Her area of expertise spans geometric design, stormwater design, drainage, project management, and quality control management. Her digital transformation journey has been significant in embracing new 3D software, as well as learning how to automate design functions with advanced civil technology. Mamonko has experienced firsthand the benefit and the rewards of BIM in civil and digital transformation, some of which she will be sharing with you today. Isa Lembada is a civil technologist at the City of Cape Town. He has 9 years focused experience in the analysis, design, construction, and maintenance of civil engineering hydraulic infrastructure. His current responsibilities include the coordination of infrastructure development in both the public and private environments, implementation of asset management principles, design approvals, construction management, and the mentoring of staff. He believes that BIM could be a valuable tool in the design and management of multidisciplinary complex projects, and that modeling underground engineering infrastructure using design software can go a long way in developing accuracy and allow project managers to understand the impacts of top structures on underground infrastructure, thereby improving risk management strategies, sustaining improved communication between stakeholders, and allowing for the provision of clear quality reporting to clients and end users. Our next speaker is Dr. Caldine Davey. She's a senior lecturer at the University of Pretoria, so we are bringing you an academic perspective as well. As it says, she's a senior lecturer at the University of Pretoria, as well as a director at Region 50 and the Pocket Sense. She has been involved in the acclaimed Hatfield project, which has pushed the envelope of what is possible with BIM in adopting and mastering IoT, digital twinning, and a robotic scanning dog, to name but a few. And it's a dog you don't have to clean up after. Having spent 2 years as a postgraduate research associate on African digital twin cities, she has a firm grip on BIM and is pivotal in transferring the knowledge to our future recruits. And then another speaker that should not require too much introduction is Vishal Luchman, who is currently Managing Director in the transportation sector at Zutari. He is a professional engineer with over 22 years experience in leadership and management of businesses related to the development of infrastructure projects. Aside from a master's in philosophy and leadership, an MBA, a diploma in business management, his base BSc engineering degree, and a diploma in civil engineering. He is currently completing his PhD in urban studies at the University of Johannesburg. Vishal was previously the CEO of SAICE and has steered our organization through various challenges within the organization, industry, and the country as a whole. Before his role at SAICE, he was the Director of Maritime Aviation and Rail Business at the consulting firm WSP. Vishal has also held various other noteworthy positions, including Director of the Maritime and Freight Advisory Board at Royal Haskin DHV and also Deputy Chief Engineer at Transnet. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Angela, who will give you a quick overview of how the session is going to run, unless you want me to do that, Angela. And then thereafter, we will let you have a quick bash at doing a competition that Baker Baynes have kindly put together. Angela, shall I wrap up the agenda for you, or would you like to handle that?
I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Tom.
Therefore, it's my pleasure to hand over to Angela and that very, very well-informed team. And I trust you will all enjoy the interaction for the afternoon. And please use the chat box for your questions so that Angela can keep an eye on what it is that you are wanting to have further deliberation on. Over to you. Thanks, Angela, and good luck with the panel.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Okay, welcome to all of you. Before, at the beginning when they say, gentlemen, start your engines, I'm going to ask all of them to put their cameras on, but let me just cover the agenda first so that you all know what to expect. I think the idea of the agenda is just to give you some context around the role of BIM in civil, what's happening globally, how much of that is being translated locally. And then I think that the bulk of the conversation is going to focus on what we can actually do here, what people are already doing, what we can learn from them. And if you've been considering adopting BIM or moving into BIM workflows, we'll have a section where we can actually explain and share some advice and some examples on how you can take that first step, because it could sometimes be a little bit intimidating. Okay, great. So that's the agenda. I think let's get started on the conversation. I hope you're all comfortable and got some glass of water and turned your phones off. Panelists, if you guys are happy to put your cameras on so that everybody can see what you look like. Welcome. All right, so the first item on the agenda is discussing global trends. And Marek, you spent a lot of your time advising international companies in the civil infrastructure space for Autodesk. I'm sure you get an up close and personal look at how companies actually have to implement BIM workflows, how they have to change existing ways of working. Could you perhaps sort of explain to us what the key trends around BIM and civil that you're seeing globally, and then also sort of if you can cover, around adoption, implementation, and challenges that international firms are currently facing?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I guess, I'm deeply involved in the UK sector. I'm part of the British Standards Committee that's authored the UK government BIM guidance, and that's become the ISO 19650 series that I trust many people are on this session have heard of. And I'm starting there because I believe that ISO 19650 has been a really strong catalyst for international consistency on how we deliver BIM projects across all sectors. But I'm seeing really strong take up within the infrastructure world. It's because it's actually tackling the way we deliver projects less from the use of advanced geometric modeling tools, but actually from addressing issues associated with poor information management. And it's really controlling the creation, well, the planning, the creation, the approval and use of information through the capital project lifecycle and into operations. So it's really a recognition that we've got all these fantastic digital tools at our disposal, but if we still live in a world of chaos with poor quality control, then our projects will still suffer issues of error, misuse, problems on site. And I think if there's a single trend, it's actually that we need to kind of get our house in order before we can start benefiting from maybe generative design or artificial intelligence, predictive use of technology, if we're still actually mismanaging the sharing of information. Certainly, this is something that's very strong in Europe, and I'm actually part of the European Standards Committee Working Group 6. That is actually, we've just released the first draft of a technical report looking at the use of BIM in the infrastructure sector in Europe, specifically BIM standards adoption. And I don't want to give any impression that everybody's flying away and that we're all kind of working heavily in BIM, because the actual feedback is, let's say 50% are on a mature journey and 50% are still doing things in a more analog, traditional way. And from the half that is adopting BIM standards, it's still not universally mature and well adopted. We are in the early stages of using standards like ISO 19650. Certain components of that are very well implemented. I'm sure you've heard of common data environments, or CDEs, and are using tools already. And that's kind of the starting point. And I think, once we have a supporting technology like a CDE, that information management piece doesn't become a burden. It's not a complex, it's not something, oh God, I've got to do something extra. Actually, it's starting to take away some of the frustration and challenge of organizing information, because we start using the tools. The tools give us some degree of compliance checking. Have I used the correct file naming convention when I upload? Yes. Immediately the documents and materials are all in the right place. We've got workflow tools to do approvals, and we can invite the right parties to the right information at the right time, and also show the intent and purpose for which the information was created, because those are the areas where we have historically fallen down, and now we've got the technologies to make us share information better, and the information we're sharing is again a level of maturity higher because we're using BIM rather than CAD.
So are you finding that initially BIM was kind of seen as this whole sexy 3D modeling thing, right? So building information modeling, really cool 3D tools, really great technology, and people got so caught up in that and not realized that actually the foundation of it, as you said, is information. I mean, we had a dinner with some sort of key stakeholders in August, and what was really interesting is that there was a limited reception to the idea of building information modeling, but when it was repositioned as better information management, it just made a different level of sense. And so you talk about, sort of half of the companies who are kind of still muddling along and trying to adopt them, and the other half which are fully adopting it and fairly mature. And I would assume some of it would have to do with the UK mandating BIM on certain projects. What do you see in the companies who are struggling to adopt BIM or still relatively immature compared to those who are a lot more mature? Is it purely around information management or the other things at play?
I think actually there's a slightly different aspect here, which is we when we did the UK BIM mandate, we talked about the concept of push-pull, and the push was from the supply chain, so industry saying we want to use these great tools, and then the pull was actually from the public sector, so government saying, actually, we're fed up with the inefficiency and delivery of our projects, be they buildings or infrastructure. We want to see you as a supply, as the industry, step up and do a better job. And, we're all taxpayers. So if we're paying taxes for poorly delivered projects, then we all suffer. But everybody has to mature at a kind of a similar rate. So there's been a huge investment, certainly in the UK, in our public sector agencies. They've all recognised the value of the information as part of their procurement, as opposed to just the physical asset. So it's very much focused around asking up front for what you need at the end, or what you might need during the process in order to make progress or stop or other decisions. So everybody's had to, become a bit more grown up and stop living in that traditional, maybe adversarial world that was quite comfortable and everybody accepted that's how we worked, to say, no, actually, this is a professional industry, and actually what we want it to be is an industry of choice to young people, and we want to promote a different image, because we want construction to be something that people aspire to work in, not use it as a kind of place of last choice. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time, but certainly I think when you ask the question about the 50% that are perhaps slower, it's because they're not being asked to do it. They're happy to live in their, dare I say, slightly complacent world. But those who are moving forward is because if they don't do this, then they're not going to win the projects and not going to be able to deliver work. So it is very much a collaborative aspect with the public sector, and I'm seeing that not just in the UK, by the way. The Nordics are very mature. They're just a couple of days ago, the Trafikverket in Sweden has put out a requirement the information will be handed to them in IFC, because there's brand new IFC for infrastructure available, and they need that, not because they want to make the industry work harder. It's actually because they want good data into their operational systems
and be a lot more efficient.
Yeah, it's about, if you ask up front, you get good data at the end, you can then manage your assets more effectively, because we don't build infrastructure for 10 years. We build it for 50, 100, 150 years. So let's make sure we get good data there.
Thanks, Mark. So Shoaib, in sort of the South African context, you look at a lot of what Mark was saying. There are a lot of similarities, even though we're slightly more immature as a BIM market compared to the UK and other countries. What is your perspective on that?
Thanks, Angela. I definitely agree with your statement there. The maturity in our market is still in its infancy stage, in the sense that if you look at the past 2 or 3 years, especially from a civil context, dealing with a lot of consultants here in South Africa, as well as Africa abroad, the momentum was very slow, where the industry was kind of dragging its feet, if I could say that, in embracing like digital transformation in the industry. Fast forward to about now, which is 2022, we are seeing that voice for digitization it's seeping through the cracks, if I could say that. As Marek has said, if no one is actually asking you to do it by compulsion, no one is really pushed in that direction. And what we're seeing here, rather from a top-down approach, we are seeing consultants use a bottom-up approach, where amongst peers, amongst organizations, industries, they're seeing that digitization, building information modeling, or better information modeling as it's going to now, is the way forward. And data value is also coming into fruition, where consultants see that data at the start, or good data from the start and then delivered at the end, gives more insightful operations, maintenance, facilities management, and so on. From a South African perspective, looking at civil engineering projects specifically, I have seen consultants embrace the technology component of BIM. Remember, BIM is not just the technology, but it's rather the methodology that the technology is incorporated into, which is a great thing, because if you're looking at an engineer, they're looking for efficiency, they're looking for innovation, they're looking for things that are going to save time, money, cost, give you alternatives. And by embracing the technologies, they're getting that first taste of actually what BIM is. Of course, the ISO standards, as Marek said, it's not, I would say we're not very mature in that aspect. We're still trying to get the groundwork right. But I'm very encouraged to see, and you will hear the stories from the rest of the panelists, that we are making good inroads from a civil perspective.
I think, in that context, sometimes a bad economy is a great motivator.
Correct. It's a good catalyst.
Yeah, exactly. Clade, you manage you drive the Hatfield Precinct Digital Twin project. How are you finding sort of the management of information in your project?
Sure. So I'm a bit of a black sheep on this panel because I am driving the digital twin discourse where BIM is a piece of the puzzle. And what I'm finding is that this is not a single stakeholder game, right? And like our first speaker, Mark, said, I think it was him, that it's a team sport and we need to educate from the bottom up about team playing. And I found in our culture of the built environment, that's the biggest mind shift we need to make because we're not in the first world or UK contexts in terms of our public sector, in terms of legislation, in terms of whatever is going on. And we don't have the assumptions like power, electricity, and things like that to build consistency into these practices that others are doing in the rest of the world. So for us, managing information is the template we can learn from overseas or other places, but driving cultural change is more important. And to get people to learn how to work together about information, to break down the barriers of fear about data and how it works and how it comes together, that's, I think, way more dominant for us than the structural, technical packet of information and give it over this way at the moment. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it's, it's a big mind shift of, worrying about people copying your homework. Yes. And protecting your IP to actually realizing that a project only benefits if we're able to share the right information to the right people. Vishal, so from a Satori perspective, you work on a lot of projects in Africa and a lot of stakeholders. And then, you have the added bonus of different cultural groupings and different ways of working in each of those countries. What is sort of what Marek and Shoaib and Khaled have said? What do you find sort of resonating in the work that you're doing?
Thanks, Angela. We have a very wide spread of clients of varying maturities. And when we consider the opportunity that sits with us in the form of BIM and other types of integrative types of software, it creates opportunity that we sort of sell back with our clients, encouraging the transformation that is required. And it's really around trying to ensure that our clients are actually sustainable, so that we can provide the services to them. What we wouldn't want to see is, for example, marginalization of youth in this discussion. And our education system is very concerning in terms of the quality that we receive in terms of the secondary and tertiary education. And we wouldn't want anyone to be left behind. So when it comes to public sector clients especially, what we do encourage as we do our assignments with them is the collection of information, for example, because if you don't have the info, it's very difficult to start to use the software and appreciate the value that it would bring. So from my perspective, especially on the continent, it's technology that is typically imported, in a sense that service providers would not ordinarily have that same level of maturity in country. So there's much of our continent that is not mature at all, and we not even appreciate the concepts that we are talking about today, let alone youth or education. They just are not knowing it at all. So, and these are some of the countries that need it the most, because they're having, really humanitarian issues, that need to be dealt with. So crisis is something that's difficult to in crisis mode, it's difficult to appreciate some of these technologies because we're fighting fires all of the time. And sometimes you need a little bit of slowing down to start to appreciate how do we work with this to bring back efficiencies into the game. And I think that is some of our hurdles that we are finding, working both in South Africa and on the continent. Thank you.
Marek mentioned, I'm not going to let you go, I have one more question.
Okay.
Marek mentioned earlier about sort of the push-pull, right? And you mentioned about sort of some of your clients that you're working with, almost taking them on this BIM journey with you. And I'm sure that a lot of people listening in will go, well, I don't know why I need to do BIM. My clients aren't asking for it. You know, and how many of your clients have sort of asked for BIM and you actually sort of implement BIM workflows, methodologies and projects that you work on, and how many do you just do it because that is the obvious, you know, rational way of working?
It's difficult to give you an exact number, but what I can give you is the sense that we have. The appreciation for this technology is typically better received in the private sector and not so much in the public sector. The more mature SOCs are working with this technology already, and that's sort of easy to have the conversation around how do we enhance and work better with BIM. But there are others that have no interest in that because they seem to prefer the older ways of doing it. And the reason why we're selling this is not because it enhances us, it's because we need projects to happen efficiently, similar to what Marek was talking about. And this allows us to do so. It also allows us to bring more of our sector-based employees, in other words, in the construction sector, together and become a collective where we don't work against each other. Because really what we want to do is reduce the cost of doing business, and efficient delivery of projects goes a long way in reducing the cost of doing business. We are normally criticized in this country for expensive supply chains, expensive transport costs. But if you look at why that happens, technology is one of those topics that is not sitting in as part of the solution to these issues. A lot of it is related to people, but if you mix people and technology, we see a good relationship coming, and then appreciation for efficiency. We have in this country, and sometimes perhaps on the continent as well, lack the appreciation for time. We take too long to decide, we take too long to do. And that's why I think BIM allows us the opportunity to converge those concepts into one so that we can progress as a collective, similar to what Kaylee was mentioning on. It's a team effort, and we can't have one service provider knowing how to use it, whilst many don't. We're still bringing an unsustainable ecosystem within the construction sector in South Africa.
That's broken links in a chain then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vishal. So when we look at what's actually possible in South Africa, Monica, you're part of the Roads and Transport Department at AM Consulting, and your department recently embarked on a digital transformation rollout. How have you found the process? I think a lot of people here considering it might go, well, that's really nice, but it just feels like a really big elephant. How have you found the process of that specific transformation in your company?
Thank you, Angela. The transformation, honestly speaking, we haven't also completed the process of rolling out because we've got various disciplines within the organization. But so far, what we have observed, aligns with why the organization opted to embark in this digital transformation. For example, one of the key elements for the organization to go through this route was because of the competition in the industry. We are all aware that nowadays, for you to be able to secure jobs, you need to offer huge discounts. And unfortunately, if you do designs, we can call it in traditional methods, or it's really not economical for the organization. It's not in terms of duration, efficiency, even the quality of the product that one will produce will not be enough with the amounts that we are being allocated or awarded with. And obviously, since the organization is growing, looking back from where we come from and as an organization to where we are right now, we are undertaking complex projects, which requires a platform such as BIM. And obviously, if you are awarded these complex projects, expectation is also very high. So you need to produce high quality of work within the scope, within quality, acceptable quality, and in duration. So currently, what we're experiencing is the team momentum. Obviously, because now we're using both systems, we're still using the old softwares in collaboration with BIM. The team is finding a little bit of difficulties in processing information. I can give a practical example of a building that we're doing. It's actually a hospital in Dihlabeng.
Yes.
Oh, am I still audible? Sorry, we're doing one project. It's a hospital in Dihlabeng. Since we're using different types of softwares and so forth, if the architectural designs are changed, then it impacts all the other work streams.
Noko, I think we're having problems with your connection. Okay, I think while we wait for her to connect back, Sean, you've been in the business for 33 years. And when you started, is Sean on?
Yes.
No, there you are. So when you started, it was pen and paper, right? And drawing boards. What has your experience been so far on sort of the adoption of BIM workflows and processes inside of your business? And are you finding sort of, the same things that Manoka was saying around having to be a lot more competitive in how you bid for and deliver projects?
Thanks, Angela. Most certainly, it's exactly the same all over. If you don't become smarter, you do not become successful. It is the case that change is challenging for most people. If you choose not to change and keep up with the technology, you and your company will soon not be able to get work from the large mining/production clients and other large consulting firms. We have seen this firsthand, where a few of our clients have decided to use the full ability of 3D modeling from the start to the end on their projects. We either had to make the change or not get involved in their current projects, including projects that are in the pipeline. What did we have to do? We had to purchase the new software and have our team trained. And of course, this is one item that is probably also putting people on the back foot. The cost of these softwares, this whole suite, is not cheap. If one just looks at it, we pay an order of 38,000 Rand in South Africa for a suite per person. So it's currently probably one of the reasons why not too many people are latching onto it, because 38,000 per year per workstation. Initially, the feeling was, this is a lot of work. This is when my team and I started. The feeling was, this is a lot of work. But after 18 months, we started seeing the benefits. As Angela mentioned, I started off my career working on the drawing board, the A0 drawing board. I worked for one of the companies that were instrumental in building or engineering a lot of our power stations. I used to work for WLPU Consulting Engineers, now called Knight Peacehold. I found that it was important to embark on the changeover in a phased approach. We decided to first take on the training of the drawing office team to be conversant with a few different packages that suits our type of work. We did not try to take on all the other benefits and aspects because it's overwhelming. On one of our previous discussions with Shoaib and his team, I just used the term and I said, some of these softwares have got, I'm just using a number, 27 different benefits and aspects. If you try to embark on all of them one time, you're going to run away. So we use the phased approach. I said to my team, guys, we all different levels of experience and so forth. Let's take this on one step at a time, but the steps need to be fairly short duration so that it doesn't end up being the case where we finally get to retirement age and we haven't finished. I'm comfortable with where we are at this stage, and I've already seen the benefits. We will shortly commence with the next batch of aspects we would like to add to the way we do our projects.
I think you raise an important point, Sean. You know, it's a big BIM elephant. Everyone tries to eat it in one bite, and he said it's completely intimidating. And then, you know, there's also the reality of having to have your team take downtime while they're being trained and upskilled. You said it was sort of 18 months that you've been doing that. What are the immediate benefits that you've already seen?
So Angela, it's not only 18 months that we've been doing this. When we did start, it took us about 18 months until a point where the team became comfortable.
Okay.
We obviously had to simultaneously learn between 3 and 5 different software packages, because some of them you can model and draw in them. In others, you can't generate a drawing. So you're learning 3 to 5 different tools at the same time. We've just about completed using the new software, I would say in the order of about 7 years, and the benefits are amazing.
Such as?
I'm going to run through some of them now. In the old 2D AutoCAD days, clash detection was achieved mostly by experienced drawing office team doing lengthy 3-dimensional calculations, geometry, trigonometry. Now with using the various 3D modeling software, as the model is built, the structure is engineered to fit equipment, etc. We generally operate in the mining and manufacturing industry, underground and surface. So fitting equipment into intricate structures with a lot of piping, it's always a nightmare. In the 2D AutoCAD days, every plane, elevation and section was drawn from scratch. Now using the correct 3D model software, your views are generated by the model, and best of all, when changes are made, all views are automatically updated. In the 2D AutoCAD days, bill of quantities was done afterwards and manually, and when changes were made, changes to quantities were one by one. With the 3D modeling software, once the initial setup is done, quantity takeoff is automatic, and when changes are made in the model, the bill of quantities schedule changes automatically. We also, approximately 9 years ago, we also started using drone technology in our projects. I use drones twofold. One of them is to do my audits. I audit lots of big structures that are very high, silos, chimneys. In the old days, we used to use binoculars. So we use drone technology to basically create video clips. We even fly up to the top of tall chimneys and look at problem areas for clients. That enables us to do audits. I do extensive audits around the country. So drone technology has made it possible. Some of my clients have been amazed. They've got chimneys that are 105, 120 meters high, and the cat ladders are so old, it's risky to climb up there. We took our drone, we flew 3 meters away from the point, and you could see this thing firsthand. So drone technology in auditing is amazing. We also use drone technology in our newer projects, and we're still finding it is very selected. We sometimes are able to generate a concept for kickstarting options with the client. We have already on a few projects been able to generate a concept on a small project 24 hours after being on site. So you go to site, you fly your drone over the footprint, and initially when we started, we didn't use the full benefit of the drone technology. Also, our drone is not that accurate. So we used to use a scaled system where you would measure something on the ground, and you would be able to scale your drone video and snapshots. The next morning, you're in the office, you download these video clips, and you can play your video, and you can stop it at second number 37 and make a snapshot, and print it on a A1 print in color, take a Koki pen, make a concept. That same afternoon or the next morning, you email it to the client. In the old days, how did we do it? You went to site, you saw what the client is wanting to do. What did you tell him? Right, I think we need to get a surveyor. You need to appoint him. Now he gets prices. He appoints a surveyor. 2 weeks later, you get the survey in a format which doesn't have photogrammetry with it. Our drone pictures has got photogrammetry with it. The client gets it. He doesn't have time to understand a drawing because most clients are not engineers. Some of them are accountants. And it's 24 to 36 hours later, he's got a concept, which we sketched on the drone photo. Of course, you can use Google, but Google is blurry. I'm talking about making nice pictures using drone technology. These are just a few aspects of benefit, and each one results in a fair percentage of reduction in man hours, which equals cost saving. Cost saving technologies, techniques results in being more successful on future tenders, more competitive, as some of the panelists have already mentioned.
Yeah, and you can actually take on a lot more projects than you would have been previously, I'm sure. Monoko, can I go back to you? Because I'd love to hear about your hospital.
Oh, thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. It's perfect. Thank you.
I would request to switch off my camera because I think my network is not good.
Okay, not a problem.
Right. We are currently undertaking a project that we were awarded by Guha. And I think the appointment was done 2-3 years back. And that's where we experienced a lot of challenges. The fortunate part is most of the product of the Autodesk, the company had already purchased, but we were not using it to the fullest capacity. So what happened was every time when the architect would change any element on the SDP, it would actually affect other disciplines such as electrical, mechanical, civil structures. So they would actually pick up on a later stage that certain things on the SDP was changed. So this is one of the reasons why we decided in embarking this digital transformation.
So are you finding, almost the same thing with Sean? Did you have almost the same learnings, as in they didn't try to eat the whole elephant at once? They looked at what parts of the technology were relevant to their business and where they could start, rather than trying to do everything at the same time.
Yes. We when we undertook training, it was very selective. I think the first group that went in was more of roads and transport, and the team just underwent that. But also, even with that, only a few were selected to do IDAs. So we are still rolling out the process of fully adopting BIM. So it is going to take years, because at the moment, even with projects that we have currently, some we are still using other softwares, and we import necessary information that we need to use on whether it's Civil 3D or Revit, etc. So
Thanks.
it is going to take some time for us to be fully functional.
Yes, BIM is not a software you buy and plug in, and then you go from zero BIM implementation to sort of BIM stars overnight. Essa, you're from the municipality in Cape Town. I think your responsibility is sort of managing the water infrastructure. Am I correct? Essa, I think you're muted.
That's correct, Angela. Am I audible as well?
Yes, you are. Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome.
So you've listened to kind of what everyone has been saying around the benefits with Monoko and Sean, and I'd like to ask you, you haven't embarked yet on BIM implementation in the municipality, but what do you think would be almost the biggest benefits of it, based on the challenges you're currently facing? People are saying that our water challenges are soon going to eclipse electricity challenges.
Yeah, that's a good question, and before I just go into the answer of that question, I think it's good to say that I might feel like most of the audience or the attendees do today, because I haven't embarked on the BIM journey yet. And what you guys were all saying before this about how it's taken more off in the private sector than it was in the public sector. And there's a lot of nervousness due to legislation and a number of factors. And simply, it's difficult to change your mindset in a large organization. And if something is working, then we really need to change. That's sort of the challenges and the mindsets that you need to overcome, which is quite tough in a big organization. And I myself was a bit, nervous to join the panel, but like Shoaib mentioned before, if you're not forced to expand your knowledge and try new things and adapt, then you will just never get there. And I thought, okay, let me be brave and participate and let me see what this is about. So I've not done a project on BIM, but from what I've heard and from the panel discussions, it's fascinating. So coming back to the answer of the question, where does BIM sort of fit in the municipal view? I think you have to understand from a municipal perspective, we have this massive sets of data that we have to manage, and our core function is always dealing with aging infrastructure such as pipes, sewer pipes, stormwater infrastructure, road, etc., etc. And then also catering for the current demands and also the future demands. And doing all of that within the necessary legislation and supply chain processes, it's quite tough, but I feel like we do our best, obviously. And that's all it's about. It's about that data. Because in a simple terms, if you do not know where your pipe is, how do you sort of repair it? And I think, and you mentioned it in the beginning about BIM is actually better described as better information management. And all the data we have is all actually, it is actually a 3D space. And we are actually, I have quality GIS records that is linked to ArcGIS and all of those programs in the 2D space. And that's where I am at the moment. But all these pipes and the roads and geometrics and the services actually have 3D data, and I think that's understood, such as depths, material types, age, velocity, and all the other things that you can attach to them. And I think from a municipality, we need to explore the 2D to the 3D space. And listening to everyone, I think the possibilities that I thought out of, I find them down to 3. I think we understand the service clashes are very, very important. But the 3 that I would like to mention, and obviously because I'm not that experienced, this is the possibilities I see. So these are failure and consequences of failure. So if you pitching a project to the supervisor or the person who's funding your project, if you can model and if you can create the consequence of failure in a virtual space, then surely you can understand the importance of upgrading that asset. And I feel like if you have good quality data, the building information modeling sector can actually do that for you. And that will actually allow you to have the priority of what you need to do in check. And then the second thing is actually communication with end users. I think one of our challenges we have is where we do upgrades to infrastructure, we obviously impact the traffic flows, we impact the general public. And it's quite sometimes frustrating if the full story of a project is not given out. So I thought about it, and if for example, a road upgrade is displayed on building information modeling somehow, then end users might actually say, you know what, I'm proud to be a part of the city that sort of has this technology available, and I'm proud to be a part of this project. So if I need to take a short diversion here to get to my work, then I'm okay with it. And the third thing I actually picked up from my research was the scheduling, operations, and management. Just for example, if you have routine maintenance on treatment plants or on sewage plants or even water pipelines, I think BIM actually has a aspect where you can create those repairing schedules and give good quality reports, and large data can be manipulated. And that actually will make your entire communication with your repairs team so much simpler. So that's where I see those are the possibilities from the municipal sector. And yeah, I hope we get there.
So I know when City of Cape Town faced their day zero, I think you guys had a very detailed dashboard that you were using to monitor. I'm sure it would have been significantly different if you'd already been running BIM processes and had all of that data available in a format that you could actually use and use predictively.
Yes, exactly. And that communication with the end users is extremely critical, because if, for example, just take the water crisis that you mentioned, if you communicate to the end users somehow that your dams are 60-70% full, and this is the volume reduction every day, and this is the inflow, then surely they will also play their role in sort of reducing that consumption. So yeah, there is a space there where you can manipulate the software. I do feel that.
Thanks, Isa. Clade, with your Hatfield digital twin project, what is possible? I mean, in light of what Isa said around municipalities being able to better manage their infrastructure and almost preempt issues, and also being able to manage what happens in the precincts. I mean, I know we chatted previously, and you said, well, then, at some point you could manage traffic as well, not just water usage and electricity usage and actual performance of the various buildings, etc. in the area. What are sort of the full benefits that you see from your digital twin project?
Well, that's a very loaded question because I'm doing a city. So for the audience sake, I'm in an innovation role. So our job is to figure out what is possible, and we're still at the early stages of building this SIM, city information model. We're talking about BIM as building information, but the same logic applies to city information, right? But what we imagine once we put all these pieces together is situations where flows, whether it's people or stuff, make better decisions in real time. So what I mean by that is we're used to traffic. It's very easy to think about Google Maps and Uber and things like that, where real-time traffic twinning is happening already around us, right? When we engage with that system, we in real time make decisions, and the system responds to us in real time and tells us what to do. But if we scale that up to, let's say, homelessness and softer issues that are not, or purchasing power across cities, or desirability in the rental markets and things like that, that same Uberization or Google mapping application is what we hope to discover. So I think once you think of the idea of living data as opposed to hand-overable data, the conversation changes dramatically. And in BIM, most of our conversation is about how to hand over decisions and information well. But in twinning, digital twinning, we're starting to say, how do we behave when we have information at hand? And that's the kind of thing we hope to learn as we do cities, I don't know if I can answer you in direct benefits because no one in the world knows yet. But we are hoping to discover those kinds of questions along the way.
So Vishal kind of touched on it earlier in his comment about the right skills being taught, right? So you're having students coming out of university. How do we prepare them with the right skills in an environment like this where the technology is constantly changing, right? So how do you prepare them? How do you teach them? And then, you know, you can probably touch on this, and I'll probably ask Vishal as well, is that and we had this conversation at Harambee, is the role at which training and education has to happen, is that industry is saying that universities need to teach them and give them to us fully formed and ready to start working. And universities are saying we can only do so much. There's also a level of training and that is expected when they start working.
Yeah, so I've shifted back and forth a lot on this particular topic, because on the one hand, currently I'm an educator role, and I'm responsible for producing architects and QSs and whatever comes through the door. But the thing is not to teach the technical learning, it's to teach the learning to learn is more important. So we've learned that if I teach BIM 360 in 2020, by 2021, I'm out of date. I can't keep up that mode of education if I'm going to focus on technical learning, but I can focus our pedagogy to focus on learning to learn and learning to navigate the ecosystem of technology, which is, I think, more useful for us as educators, because if you speak to the recipient of our student, of our currency is numbers of students and research, the recipient of our skills, they all ask for different things. You know, the planner is asking for GIS skills, the builder is asking for 6D programming skills and stuff like that. We can't cater to that smorgasbord of necessary things. But I think what educators need to do is, how do we make sure that our workforce of the future is capable of learning as opposed to being competent at a technical instrument? I think that's what we've discovered.
Thanks, Claire. That's cool. Marek, I'd like to ask you from a global perspective, are you seeing that disconnect? Are your universities training new students differently? You know, what level of training then has to happen when these students sort of enter the workplace? And is Claire correct about teaching a way of learning and thinking and then learning the tools on the job?
I fully agree with the idea that you teach people how to learn and not the tools, because if you enter university now, in 3 years' time, you'll hopefully graduate, or maybe 5 years' time, depending on your course. And indeed, the technology might well be obsolete. Funnily enough, I took my daughter to a number of universities in recent weeks because she's actually looking to do a media and communications course starting next year. And that was a statement made by one of the prospective leads in one of the universities, that we don't want to teach you how to use the cameras and the kit. We want to teach you how to be a good prospective employee. And if you want to play with the kit, yes, you've still got the freedom to do that. But for us, it's more about learning the principles of the subject. And I think this is very true in our area. However, there is a very large need for the education sector to embrace BIM, because BIM is the way forward for our industry. Using, you know, digital tools, we can't stay in a old paradigm of paper and 2 dimensions. That's gone. That is literally gone. And I think, you know, Monoko said something earlier about the fact that her company can't deliver the work in the old style. They have to use new tools to keep up. And I think it's not just a kind of a demand thing. I think it's also a way to attract young people. So what we're seeing is very much BIM on the courses for civil engineering, architecture, and general building subjects. Perhaps less so in the kind of cost management world, but even so, they're still seeing it because it's accelerating takeoff. It's a way to do your job more efficiently, quicker, and actually concentrate on all the other stuff. And I actually lectured at the University of Salford last week to their MSc course in BIM, because these courses are coming up. So there's more and more courses, particularly in the kind of postgraduate area for masters around BIM, because people are wanting to learn BIM. Maybe after a couple of years in industry, they see this as an add-on to their existing knowledge, so it's a career development option, or because it's being demanded in those projects. So I think the answer is BIM is not just here to stay, it's actually the future, and maybe fewer of us will learn how to use the different ink pens that I learned on the drawing boards in the past, because that ship is sailed. What we need to focus on is the value of the design process. And sorry, just one other point on this is BIM is radically different, if done well, to CAD. CAD is just a electronic ink. BIM is talking about assemblies, about the way construction needs to be executed, the materials that come together. And it actually is a better fit for young people who are not necessarily versed in the construction industry. They understand Lego, they can play with Lego, they can build things. So let's teach them this is a better way of working. This is a really exciting way of working. And if you do this well, you can have virtual reality headsets, you can play with drones, you can do all of that great stuff, but you have to start with the basics. So I think from an education side, it's really critical that universities start to embrace this. But SAICE, I should also look at this, because I'm sure you accredit courses in SAICE, and I used to be on the digital transformation panel at the Institution of Civil Engineers, where we challenged the Joint Board of Moderators to put digital as one of the assessment criteria for courses. They were very reluctant to do this because they wanted to favour the old traditional processes. And unfortunately, that was a reflection of the makeup of the Joint Board of Moderators. They were greybeards, is the way I would describe them. And I think, you know, if we want to have a flourishing, exciting industry, we must put digital skills as one of the fundamental criteria across the industry for education.
Yeah, Khalid's going to jump out of her chair because this is.
I really want to comment on that because as an educator, I'm limited to what the Department of Higher Education and my professional bodies list as core competencies. And this is a serious constraint. So if I produce a candidate that is falling outside of the list of core competencies for architect, engineer, and runner, I cannot be accredited as an educator to educate that architect. So I have to revert to the prerequisite from our professional body, whether QS, whatever it is. And none of them, in our context, none, have listed digital skills, soft or hard, as core competencies in the 21st century. None of them are listing information management as a core competency, data science in a very basic form. All of this stuff we're asking of our BIM professional to be, none of this is recognized in our design and construction bodies. So as an educator, I have to revert back to what that license is buying as opposed to what it ought to be developing. And I think as a built environment community, it's very important for us to put pressure on our professional councils to recognize the current way of working is digital, never mind that the future is going to be 100% digital. And I just want to put that out there to our community to help us advance that discourse.
Thanks, Claire. So Vishal, I have a question for you. Working at Satari, you have a lot of graduates coming out of universities and a lot of professionals who've been working in your company for a while. And I could be incorrect in saying this, so if I am, please correct me. But traditionally, people are educated to kind of have a very narrow field of focus. And now BIM requires that you kind of, I mean, you know, even in other disciplines, people are encouraged to kind of have a broader perspective on what happens in the environment rather than just their specific job description and role. How are you finding sort of, you know, new graduates coming out and adapting to the sort of almost digital way of working and having to collaborate with a whole lot of different stakeholders that previously might not have been as required?
Thanks, Angela. There's two answers to that question. One, we find that many of our graduates are much more technology savvy than perhaps some of our senior engineers. And for obvious reasons, it's expected actually. But within the senior engineers, domain, There are those that are easily transitioning into BIM, and there are some that are not. So that I think will come, in time. But there is a push happening from the juniors towards sort of teaching even the senior engineers on how easy things can become. So there's a learning happening in both directions. There's experience that many of the youngsters do not have.
Yeah.
So in other words, BIM is excellent, but there's an element of touch and feel for infrastructure that you have to have. You have to have a good feel for what is the size of things and how should things look like, just by having experience. And that is not often the case with BIM, because you're looking at a system and you're looking at it from a software perspective. So the touch and feel is sometimes not completely there with the youngsters, and that's where experience counts. So I see excellent cross-pollination happening between, in learning from both. And I promote that quite a bit, because there's also cultural nuances between youth and senior engineers as well. There's agility, there's other attributes that are very different to senior engineers. And I consider myself as one of the seniors, the one who could say DOF in terms of technology. But what I do is I appreciate what is coming, and I appreciate the learning that is coming from the youngsters who are learning a lot faster. And I think to give you the insights into the second idea is that it allows this software, and I've used parts of the software personally, and what I've found is it's easy, and it makes it easy to transition from what might be a poor education system into a place where you are suddenly now current and relevant. So I'm not so fussed about the transition for youth into BIM, because I see it happening quite easily. And the education system that Kelly is talking about, there's an element of obsolescence there, because the ability for that curricula to transform is taking too long. Just a new course will take 3, 4, 5 years to get approved. Am I right? So by the time you do that, it's obsolete already.
Correct.
So that is, and I understand where it comes from. I understand the rationale for that, and how it needs to be stress tested through the system in order to be implemented. However, that concept applies to many other disciplines, not only BIM. We're finding it in the engineering, social sciences, etc., etc. That transformation has to happen in the academic space. BIM aside needs to change. So I think the opportunity for this kind of technology is to pull youth into useful places. We spoke about that, I think, Shoaib, on other forums, where it allows for new way of learning, and all you need is the propensity or the attitude towards the software and the willingness to learn. And if you have that, I think half the battle is won and you're up and running, if you ask me. So that's why I see a transition or a transformation within the consultancy profession going forward, in terms of how we have structured our businesses to execute on work. We're going to find a lot more cost reductions coming in time, and a lot more efficiencies coming into the business, and a lot more youthful, youth desirability versus wanting to keep lots of old people after pension kind of hanging around, sharing knowledge which might not be relevant. That's my personal opinion, by the way.
I think you should share those old people with the universities, and then they can teach them the touch and feel part.
Yeah, but the touch and feel part is a really important concept, because it allows us to treat risk, and we should never underestimate what experience brings. But experience should also not limit other transformations from happening.
So both Sean and Monoko mentioned about the value of adopting BIM processes and in being competitive, right? In this environment. So Vishal, from a Satori perspective, obviously you're implementing BIM workflows and processes through, I would say, the bulk of your projects. How do you see it actually impacting on skills retention? I think everyone here knows that a real risk is that we're getting very bright and very talented, not just people out of university, but young professionals who are frustrated by the lack of digital transformation, perhaps, and are going to places like New Zealand, Australia, UK, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, where they're working on cutting edge projects. How you kind of see how Zutari sort of digital transformation processes is enabling you to retain that talent and that skill?
My opinion is that the two concepts are a little bit disconnected, because the reason for some of our colleagues leaving are multidimensional. Not often is it related to the shortage or the exclusion from the technology. What we are seeing from a Zutari perspective is, because we consider ourselves to be one of the larger firms in the country, on the continent, we have put the investment into individuals to learn and to adapt and to transform in the space. Now, that investment is not easy for every firm to be allowed to do. Many of perhaps smaller firms may not have the time and the propensity to do that investment. Unlike our colleague on the call who said they took a conscious decision, some are toying with the idea, and there's various levels of maturity. Shoaib might know exactly what I'm talking about. So what we're finding from a Zutari perspective is almost like we're becoming a victim of our own successes. So in terms of retaining, it's because we're getting poached, because our talent is now becoming so tech ready that competitors are wanting to have them. And I think, in my mind, that is where we are having a problem with retention. And to some extent, we know it's going to happen. If you are leading in some places, you are expecting the competition to look at what you are doing and sort of take where they can and be opportunistic about it. But in a bigger scheme of life, what we are doing is we're also helping educate a nation. So we are losing, but what it allows us is to bring in new talent and do the same thing. So we are actually paying an element of on an investment component of our training towards industry, really speaking. And as much as we may not like it in some cases because we lose people at critical times, we also understand the value that Zutari plays in the industry. So sort of a 50-50, yes, no, maybe, it's okay, and we move on.
There is that saying that, says, well, what if we train all our people and they leave? And the counter is, well, what if you don't and they stay?
Yeah.
It could be a worse problem to have. Shoaib, you've kind of, from a Baker Baynes perspective, you're sort of a BIM specialist, and now you're studying again. And how do you manage, that sort of transition? You're kind of seeing in person, I guess, the sort of challenges that Khaled touches on. And how do you, I'm sure there's sort of a benefit for you in bringing your BIM experience from work into the studying space, and what sort of conversations are you having in that space?
Yeah, that's also quite a bit of a loaded one, but I will try and summarize it as much as I can. So of course, previously, before getting into the technological arena, that what I am in, I realized that my passion is actually design. And the only way that you want to really be the best is you have to use technology. I came to that hard truth or conclusion on my own, because doing things by hand, even though they might have came out quite beautiful in the past, someone's beating you to that in an hour. That's literally what is the reality here. And also they're proposing other options in the same time frame. If you look at the time, like during studying and stuff, I think majority of people, even now, whether it's those that graduated a long time back, and sadly even now, where they're only exposed to the CAD element of things. There's no intelligence, there's no metadata, meaning that there's no value in it going down the line of the infrastructure. The reason why I decided to actually continue my studies is, after I've graduated, became a civil engineer, looking at and dealing with industry professionals, those are on the call, those are across Africa. I've always constantly seen this headache that, man, we know this does things, we know how to use it, but we're stuck. What do we do? There's not much of awareness, there's not much of a resistance to change. And that actually motivated me to get my master's, to say, listen, There is a good misconception at start where BIM equals architecture. That line is moving currently, where people are seeing you can apply it in engineering and prototyping and digital twinning and all of these things that involve algorithms, coding. I mean, it's so much more widely grasped. And when I sat and thought of, what topic do I go into? Structures, I think BIM has got a good exposure there. Architecture, definitely. Uh, Product design, manufacturing, they were actually the leaders because they became with the prototyping and testing of the equipment. And then I looked at transportation and roads, and there wasn't many. Linear infrastructure is always getting hit the worst, unfortunately. And that's why I decided to do it in road design, construction, digital twinning, and so on. So I would say being a student, then becoming a professional in technology, now going back into it, you have to keep up. And I mean, the sentiment shared by the panel here is you have to adapt to the way of learning, the way of consuming, the way of looking at things, and also the component or the extra dimension of practicality. I mean, I did a design way back, especially as a junior like design lead in my company, where I designed a bridge, a portal causeway that was perfect. It made the stress analysis. It did the job basically, ticked all the boxes in engineering. But the director at that time actually told me this will never work. And I had to go to the construction side, and I came to the acknowledgement that the banks approaching to the actual bridge were too steep. So the equipment or the plant that's going to carry it's going to topple over based on the load. So you can see that even though you are using technology, you do need that practical construction, hitting the ground experience, which I do agree that when you are embracing technology fully as a fresh grad or getting into the industry, it's not really given you're only like a tunnel vision, you know it's going to work, it ticks all the boxes and stuff like that. But you definitely need that practical. And that's where the senior seasoned professionals need to come in, and we need to join forces to say, listen, wow, you can do this so much more quicker. But I know that when I use A, B, and C, or these type of materials, or this type of approach, this is what happened after a year or two because they were scoured, it got washed away, it got that. And they're like, okay, let's troubleshoot a few options. I have it at my disposal as a young professional that I'm pretty good with and tech savvy. I can plug in these type of factors and get a wider approach. And that way we will get a great balance in our industry. I always say technology and academia makes the perfect symbiosis to a digitally transformed industry. And that's where we are.
So you're in discussions with, I think, EXA recently. I think Tom alluded to it in the introduction around an EXA framework to include disruptor technologies. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how do you think it's going to sort of gear the industry for BIM?
That is correct. So I got a panel together like a few months back, I think it was in July or so, where we involved different corporate leads in the industry. Because people were saying like, you're a professional, this is probably easy for you. Don't talk about it. You're living and breathing it. I was like, just like what we're doing today, we bring in different perspectives. So we involved the banking sector. We had academia, a professor from the UK. We included EXA, the acting chairman of EXA, Edmund Numalo. And after the discussion and more or less where we are right now in our panel discussion, he's like, what do we do about the education? Because again, it's too stringent, and the criterion that is meant to become a professional engineer or whatever it may be, kind of outdated. It needs to evolve with the times. I think that's what Khaled actually brought up, Dr. Khaled. And look, his response was that they have acknowledged the disruptive technologies in their framework. Acknowledgement, especially from a professional body, I think anyone can agree here is a fantastic news. And then the follow-up loaded question that was posed to him was, how long is this going to take? And unfortunately, like this answer is probably not going to be satisfactory to most that's listening, including myself, is that it's going to take about 5 to 6 years to roll out. And the reason being is that they have to test the frameworks, troubleshoot it, or what we call it, beta testing, those type of things, to see that if it is a custom. And my response, as well as like a lot of the technical specialists in the industry, say that you've got people that already have that expertise that could actually will advise you on that and will are testament to tell you that technology this is how it works, Industry 4.0, IoT, BIM, digitization, coding. It's like the bread and butter of engineering right now. And there's no other way of it. Yes, we need the practical part, but that was the input that we received. Hopefully things will change. I need to catch up with him sometime for coffee and see how it goes, but that's where we're currently standing.
I think it's going to have to work both ways, though, right? As Marek said earlier, it's a push and pull on both sides, and then waiting for people to catch up. So, Sean, I want to ask you, if you had to give some advice to the people listening in on this conversation, and they've been thinking about adopting BIM, they've gotten past the point of swallowing the cost of the software and deciding that they need to do this, which would your advice be to them sort of for a first step, or what they should consider next, based on sort of your experience and your learnings?
Firstly, a business owner or a lead engineer or project manager in an organization, he himself first needs to be aware of the technologies, the new software, what is out there. It's often the leader, if he doesn't take the step, the first step, the people below him doesn't follow. And that was one of the challenging things I had to overcome, not forgetting that I started on the drawing board. So it was quite a mind shift change, but I had to be the strong one, because I found when you're sitting in a boardroom and you've got your team, you've got two sets of people in your boardroom. You've got one set that says, this looks interesting, we're gonna really make something of this. And then you've got the other half that says, no, this is going to be a problem, it will never work. So you've got two sets of people in your office. So if anybody is wanting to embark on this big or small company, the senior management needs to first buy into it and to first get themselves fairly educated in it, and then walk the distance with their team. You have to make a final decision that you will progressively grow in the various software and documents to be able to interact, communicate and work on projects with multidisciplinary consultants and high-class clients. We have in the recent years, and we currently at a lesser scale, we're working on a project where there's we 3 different consultants, and we in different time zones in the world. There's times when the project is running a bit late, and would you believe sometimes there's a drawing that's been worked on by 3 different people. In the morning in a particular country, person 1 is working from this time to that time. He saves that particular model. Person in the next time zone takes it over, and the person in the 3rd time zone carries on. So a drawing that used to take 5 days is now producing sometimes in 2 days. It's not that easy. It's got other complications, but it's been done. I would not try to take on the entire suite of software, as I mentioned earlier, and benefits all at one go. You need to eat that elephant slowly. You need to establish, firstly, in your organization, what is your core services that you provide. In our case, for some clients, we offer the full scope of services from pre-feasibility up to co-commissioning. Other clients just want us to do design and drawing. So we looked at what our major percentage of scope of services are, and we focused on that. So we took a batch of things and started working at it, and not take it on in a big way. Certainly, we're a small organization, so it's not able to delegate something to one person that can run with it. So that made it more challenging. And I can say, once you decided to go down the path, there's no turning back. But I can say you would not even consider going back, because the benefits are too many and satisfying.
Thank you, Sean. Monoko, what is your experience if you had to, based on sort of, the road you've walked already, if you were to give someone advice on where to start, or how to start, or perhaps pitfalls to watch out for?
Okay, thank you. I was part of the team that was assigned to interrogate BIM. And obviously through research and further investigation, I think our goal was more of in terms of economical growth. Is it sustainable? Is it reliable? How is the collaboration done? Efficiency, and so forth. However, any transformation necessitates the establishment of goals and a course of action. The organization had to define the objectives clearly prior to initiating the application of BIM. And also, like what Sean said, establish the nature of projects that the organization undertakes. And a few questions were asked, such as why do we need to use BIM? How can BIM technology help the organization? How much will it cost to roll out BIM? And that relates more onto training. And obviously, once you get started with it, you won't be as efficient as somebody who has 5 years or 10 years experience using BIMs. And how is it going to assist on a day-to-day basis? So these were the questions that we posed to it within the team. And I think the answer that we received, or our conclusion, was purely based on global. How is the global reacting to BIM, and how is it assisting in terms of growth and sustainability, efficiency, and also the bottom line, which is making profit. So for somebody who wants to walk this journey, will also have to pose similar questions to see whether can they also benefit from BIM as an organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Monoko. Vishal, so you work on projects that are fairly complex across several geographies. What would your advice be?
I think my advice is we should stop talking so much about it. There actually is no option, really. I think we're just trying to mitigate our fears of change. So, and trying to talk around it so we delay the inevitable. So all we're doing is kicking a can down the road, and we're quite good at that, especially as South African. So there's no real discussion in my mind, because the thing is, engineering, provision of assets, asset management, design is a global commodity now. And with the price pressures that we are finding ourselves in this country, either you adapt or you die. You know, that's another, maybe not as well orchestrated saying, but it really comes down to that. So the quicker you get into this game, the better it is, and it will create. And I think that it actually enables sustainability. That's where I'm coming from. So if you don't, you start to become unsustainable over time. And at the rate of change that I see happening, which is enormous for me, being someone that's a bit older, I think it's going to be even faster for the youth as well. So if we don't take that step now, we're actually doing a disservice to the future engineers in the country, because they will not be climatized to using technology freely and easily, and obviously the sustainability comes into question. And coming from a country that is generally not going in the right direction with regard to sustainability, the question, the answer becomes even more obvious. But the trick is to take the journey as a collective. We have to take all of us along, not leave people behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Marek, what would your advice be?
Well, in general, I mean, I saw there was a question about how can you get one of our solution stacks for less. I suppose it's picking up on something Sean said, which my advice to anyone embarking on a digital transformation is is twofold. What first is look at what you do today. Look at where you are struggling with productivity. Look at the things that you often make mistakes in. What's costing you money? What's making people leave? And if you can identify the challenges that a business or a project faces, then you kind of know what you should prioritize, where to focus your energies. And then if there are digital solutions or workflow standards like ISO 19650 that can help mitigate some of those issues, then invest in that rather than saying, well, I need to go and buy this product or that product. So start with the problem and then pick the solution on technologies to address the problem, because then you've got a better chance of building a bigger business case to do the next investment round. You can say, look, we made this change. It took us 6 months to improve productivity by 1%. And for some of us, that is actually a huge amount of money, particularly when you're in the construction. And then that means that you can then start on the next investment. All of this is about investment. You have to make an investment, both in the technologies, but most importantly in the people. We talked a little bit about training and education. If you don't invest in the people, then they will move on. And I think you made a really good statement, Angela. How it's worse if they stay if you haven't invested in them, and I think that's very important. So when I ever speak to people, and I've been saying this before I joined Autodesk, I used to work for Atkins, and I worked for Mouchel and another big engineering company, and I was always driving digital change or technology investment, because it just makes complete sense to me that we should invest in what we do. We can't just carry on doing it the old way. Of course, there are design principles, standards that we must follow, but it seems insane that, we spend, 14 years at school and then maybe go on to university for another 3 to 5 years. And then you join a company and you go, right, that's the last time you're going to get trained. That's the last time you're going to do anything inspirational. And actually, is that going to be an exciting way to retain people? I think, we must do this. I mean, sorry, I've got my iPhone there, and I'm sure most people here have got a smartphone device. They cost a ridiculous amount of money, €1,000 or something, and people are happy to go and spend that. And yet, if you say, well, can you spend, €1,000 on a bit of software for the year to improve productivity by a massive delta, you go, oh no, I think that's not within our budgets. It doesn't make sense. So I think find your problem, look at the processes and technologies that can help mitigate some of those problems, invest in that, make sure you train the people correctly, and then go on the next round, because I can guarantee that you will prove the benefits and move forward. And the last point I want to also make is, I talked about the push-pull, is owners. It's absolutely incumbent on owners to do the same. If you're always frustrated with the quality of the work that you receive from your suppliers, if the building maintenance is costing you a fortune, if the highway maintenance is always the biggest line item on the cost, that's because it's not been done well, and it's because you're not managing your assets effectively. If you could manage your assets with better information, then procure that information as part of the process. And again, you've got to upskill as well. You've got to train yourselves to do the job better, because then all of your investments pay back. The business case is rock solid, because effectively we spent some money on this, and wow, look at this benefit. The only thing is, you must be careful. I think Shoaib mentioned some of these investments do take a few years to pay back. So overnight success isn't always going to be there, but play the long game. We're in infrastructure. We don't build our assets for 10 years. We build them for 150 years or more. It's worth sticking to your guns, because there will be a payback, and hopefully we'll attract great new entrants. We'll attract the right people into our industry, because they'll want to be in it.
Thanks, Mark. So Khaled, you have good experience in starting where you are with what you have, right? On you, on a wing and a prayer, and some duct tape. Maybe if you could just share your experience with people, because there is this perception we need to buy all the software, we have to train everybody, we have to do this, we have to change the way we work, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like that.
I fully agree with the speakers before me. start with what you have at hand and focus on driving out waste, whether it's abstract knowledge, physical waste, drive out waste and use technology to do that, and start with what you have at hand. If you can't buy a Ferrari and if you can't drive, you know, you have to start with a fuller. You have to know, you know, it's really simple steps. Learn how to drive and get your Ferrari when you mature. But start with what you got and drive out waste. That's my best advice I could give.
Thanks, anyone. So Shoaib, I'm going to leave you till last, and I'm going to ask Essa. So Essa, you almost represent, you know, all of the people on the call who are listening to what everybody said. You've heard everybody's advice. Based on that, what one first step do you think you could take as a municipality? If you know, had a genie and you kind of rubbed your magic lamp and you were given your 3 wishes?
Yeah, I'm convinced. Just by sitting on this panel. So I'll just say, talk, raise awareness, talk to whoever's on this webinar, talk to your colleagues, and you know, I was thinking about it as the discussion went along, and probably the safest way within the municipal sphere would be just to conduct a pilot. Do some research, clarify your objectives, get personnel from the different spheres such as water, sewer, stormwater, roads, building if you have to, and collaborate and identify a pilot, a suitable project, you know, investigate the benefits and run with it and see how it improves efficiency, see how it relates to the global context, see how it even relates to the public sector and get their opinions, where we went wrong, where we can improve, where we can train. Obviously, each municipality will work different and have different procurement laws that you have to respect, and you have to, you know, work within those parameters. But that's natural for every field. I think we touched on that. But yeah, I think that's my next step, is just to start talking, and yeah, wonderful awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, you've just given yourself homework, Essa. I'm going to check in on your pilot. You're going to have to give me progress reports.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think, again, coming back to what Shoaib said, if you don't put yourself out there, you're almost going to become a dinosaur, and we can't afford that. Like you guys said, we need to evolve, and even if things work, we engineers, and things can always be improved. That's what we do.
Yeah, you know, and there is a lot of value in that. The more constraints you have, the more creative you're forced to be, and the more innovative you're forced to be. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, having constraints in place. Thank you, Essa. So Shoaib, you've heard what everybody else has said. Do you have any other advice that nobody else has shared?
Okay, all right. That's a lot of pressure, but okay. Look, it's nice to be on a panel where I did the least amount of talking, because I've always been shot at like you're a pro at that or whatever. But for all of the users that are on here and thinking about embracing BIM, remember there's people like myself, like companies like Baynes, where you could actually consult with them. They've done all of the hard work. They've done all of the research for you. They can quantify. They can set out step by step for you, or if I could make it simple, they will create a diet plan so you can consume that elephant piece by piece, right? We've the people that were in industry, we've been on construction sites, we've done the design, we know what it takes in the traditional process of things. And when we realize the value that what technology can bring to you, we decided to switch to the dark side, if you want to call it that way, and make things more efficient, raise that awareness. So for anyone that's intimidated on this topic, you've got a lot of people here that you can reach out to. If you are a BIM champion in industry, you can be, no matter what scale of industry you're in, what size of community, what size of company, organization, be vocal about it, embrace it, because when people start seeing the champions rise, they want to jump onto that bandwagon and think like, wow, there's people that share the same mindset. They're really doing these things. They're making me look, in my case, I would say, damn, that person's making me look stupid. I mean, come on, like there's so many things that you can wield. And again, by partnering with technology consultants, the people that have done the groundwork for you, sit, grab a coffee, have a chat. And again, I mean, tailor it to your first step. Don't go full, like, I mean, when people start gym, they have this long list of things they want to do, and then they fall off on step one. No, scale it appropriate to your organization, to your capacity, to what you have. Work with what you have, as what you hear here all the time. And then you've got people partner with the technology, the technical specialists, the industry specialists, and they will guide you on their journey. So that's what I would have to say.
Thanks, Shoaib. I mean, I want to agree with you, you know, on that and on that one part. So as a BIM community, we found that people are so open to sharing information, sharing knowledge, helping people. You know, that's the whole thing about raising the BIM tide, right? If we help each other, a rising tide lifts all boats. The faster we help each other, the more we help each other, the sort of better we get everybody up to speed, and a really good industry. So, Marek, Carl van Niekerk's very persistent. I think he's posted the question to you twice. I'm sure you can see it in the chat. Do you want to address it?
I was actually typing out an answer, but it's probably easier to. So the question was, you know,
typing.
Yeah. So I think the question was around replacing email correspondence within the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. And I'm not an ACC expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm very familiar with what it offers, and I can't state that I understand the full roadmap. But by the way, please don't make a buying or investment decision based on this very statement. I believe I heard at Autodesk University last month that indeed correspondence is a new feature that will be added in the coming months, because many other organizations are in the same way as Carol's, finding that they're working entirely within the Autodesk Construction Cloud solution stack. And if they can maintain correspondence as part of that and avoid this slightly loose cannon that is email, then there is greater confidence that all the information's in the same place. As people come and go, you're not losing that record stack. And so, yes, I'm pretty certain it's coming, and not coming in many years, but in the near months. But again, I have to be very clear. Don't make a buying or investment decision based on that statement.
Thank you. And there's a comment here. Oh, Manuel's asking what is ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud, right? There's a comment here from Sydney. He posted, he's at what, 1742, and you know, to say that it can't just be pretty pictures and it's sort of, you know, garbage in, garbage out. I don't know which of you want to tackle it, but it is true, you know, Shoaib, it's not, technology doesn't replace due diligence, right? And proper working and proper data management. It's not a magic tool. It's not a cool Instagram filter. Do you want to tackle that one, Shoaib?
Sure. So being an engineer, we know that if you put stuff wrong in the software or technology or whatever you want, you're going to get the wrong result. So it's not putting you on autopilot. You still need your practical engineering. You need your judgment. You need whatever you have learned and acquired, your academics. That's why I say academia and technology, perfect symbiosis. I mean, they work great with each other. And you shouldn't be taking or making statements like that, because at the end of the day, we all are accountable. All stuff gets reviewed, signed off, and that. And the technology is just an enabler in this process to make your life easier in achieving your objectives. That's literally what it is.
Thanks, Shoaib. Monoko, you have your hand up.
I just want to add to what Shoaib said. Sorry for pronouncing your name wrong. But ultimately, once you get to use, whether it's Civil 3D, whatever software that we're using, you get to, on the design parameters, you can customize those things so that they suit whatever your requirements you need to achieve. So it's not a matter of, as he said, it's not a pilot thing that you just open and you speak to the software that it must produce a certain alignment. For example, if you want horizontal curve or so forth. So even if you use incorrect parameters, there will be errors, there will be warning signs. And as an engineer, you must still do due diligence by checking your designs. You must still check the outputs of what the software has generated to ensure that you have achieved the objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Monoko. Okay, so we have 6 minutes left. I don't know if anyone listening in has any other questions for any of our panelists. I know there's a comment here from, I think, is it Gillis, Kevin Kapuka, talking about the benefit of BIM, but, you know, more, we won't call them old of age, and I think we have to call them experienced, Michelle. But, you know, it's sort of using traditional methods, but I think, you know, it's been covered by the panelists already. It's going to become a market prerogative. It's going to get to the point where if you want to remain in business or remain competitive, you will have no choice. You know, there are people who are going to resist it for as long as possible, but, you know, I think in a few years they will become the exception rather than the rule. And as skilled graduates or professionals in the business, I think then the responsibility for you is to decide, you know, where you want to add value. Vishal, there's another question there for you from Carl on how you drive BIM from a way of working to a culture. If you want to. Oh, you're muted, Vishal. You have to.
Apologies.
There you go.
It's an old person's problem, the muting. So I'll give anecdotal contribution in this regard. It starts with the leadership of the firm. I think from a Zutari perspective, we've acknowledged that technology and the adoption thereof in all spaces, including BIM, is what will be the future of the consultancy environment going forward. So we've prioritized digital and digitization, including BIM and automation and all of these concepts related to becoming a lot more innovative, very much with a cost-conscious mindset. We invest in that, you know, visibly, and we communicate that with all of our staff, so that they are very well aware of what the digital journey will be. So it keeps, and we keep doing it on an ongoing basis, and we celebrate, you know, digital innovation. We've got many of our younger engineers wanting to pursue various options of configuration and coding and the like, and we allow it to happen freely. That itself creates momentum from both sides. We've got leadership support, and we've got innovation coming from many of our younger individuals, and it creates an environment that's conducive to other engineers wanting to follow and get involved. So it's almost like what they call it sheep. I wouldn't use it, but it sounds derogatory, sheep mentality. But once you start doing something, the others follow, and so do our senior engineers as well learn. And we support that whole conversation, and we support the transformation. And we think that it's a journey that we have to be ongoing. It's not really it doesn't have an end to this conversation, because I think BIM that we're talking about now is only for now. I think the future is even more complex, and we'll have artificial intelligence, you know, sort of fused into BIM, and then we don't have the garbage in. Then we got accurate data going into BIM, for example. And as different parts mature in this BIM conversation or this technology conversation, it becomes a lot faster and a lot more you know, innovative. We can do a lot more with our time versus what we were doing 20 to 30 years ago in terms of, you know, it doesn't show itself in our investment program though, because that seems to be getting delayed over time. But for those that are embracing the technology, we'll see the value.
Thank you, Vishal. So there's a question here from Rosen Tazif about reducing or avoiding corruption. So, you know, big C in the room with the big elephant. But how do you, you know, he's sort of his questions around the manipulation of these systems. But I think that, you know, one of the advantages of the BIM process is that it makes it transparent. Whereas sort of, you know, the ways of sort of working now, things are far more opaque. Which of you would like to tackle Rosen's question? Shoaib, you want to talk?
Sure, I can. So, sorry, I just broke up there a little bit. Can you repeat the question? Yeah.
Yeah. No. So around Rosen's question around how do we reduce or avoid the corruption or negative manipulation of these systems?
Again, that's also quite broad in its phrasing, because look, you've got, I would think the person is coming from an IP perspective. If I'm wrong, you can definitely drop it in the chat, because that's the only way I can see this system being manipulated from an IP perspective. Because at the end of the day, irrespective of what application you're using it in, for prototyping, for designing, for linking as a foundation to digital twinning, there's always good coming out of it. And I see the only corruption, as the word is saying, is the IP. Now, there's two parties on either side of the fence. Of course, there's those companies that want to protect their IP, and I would, from my experience dealing with civil infrastructure, mining, architecture, and stuff like that, I would say that is warranted from a energy perspective. You know, when people have certain type of patterns that they put into the products, that will result in a certain type of energy, and I can definitely get that. I think aligning more to the ISO standards, where the legislation comes in, will guide us more on that. I don't have a definitive answer on that portion. And then, of course, there's the other side of the fence, where people are saying, hey, listen, here's our products, here's our offerings freely available for you, that has all of our metadata that you can use in your design process, that you can use for space planning, urban planning, infrastructure, and so on. Here you go. And if that type of data is readily accessible, who do you think is going to be approached more for their products or for their services? Is it the person that's not readily available as a catalog, or the person that's already kitted for it, telling you, here you go, use my stuff, and then when they do get the project or the award for it, you are going to get the purchase value for that, because they're going to come and purchase it from you. So you need to see which side of the fence you want, which one is more valuable for you. But from a risk perspective, a corruption perspective, IP perspective, we have to align to the ISO and look at the legalities that come with it.
Thank you, Shoaib. Okay, so I don't see any new questions. It's just after 6. I'm sure everyone either sort of, you know, wants a beer or wants dinner or just wants to go home. So guys, to all our panelists, thank you so much for giving sort of 2 hours of your time. I know everyone's busy, and I really appreciate your time and your contributions. I hope everybody listening in was able to learn and gain value out of it. I'm assuming, though, that the contact, I see everyone has been sharing their contact details on here, and you probably would be able to get it after this if you'd like to. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. I think, you know, as Vishal said, this is just the start. You know, I think if we have this conversation again in 5 years' time, it's going to be significantly different. And we're going to have, you know, we'll probably look back on this conversation and think that we were so naive and immature. You know, we have to start somewhere. So to everyone listening in, start on your BIM journey. Don't wait. You know, as Rad, one of our community members, said, the train is coming. You either jump on or jump off the track. And so with that bit of motivation, I hope you reach out to people in your networks. Shoaib is available, and there's, you know, a lot of other people to talk to kind of get you over the line. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start and take that first step. And, you know, as Sean said, once you start, you can never go back. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time.